At the 2025 Club World Cup, while Europe's football giants arrived with all the spotlight and expectations, South America's representatives came in quietly, like warriors, carrying the spirit of Libertadores, where every match feels like life or death. And in just a matter of days, Botafogo, Flamengo, Palmeiras, Fluminense, and Boca Juniors have rewritten how the world looks at South American football. No noise, no flashy superstars. But every time they stepped onto the pitch, Europe had to pay attention. This isn't a show, it's a battlefield. And this is how South America is teaching the world what real football looks like. Let's start with Botafogo. Just days ago, their name was still a question mark. But at the Club World Cup, they've become the story, doing it in a way every Brazilian can be proud of. They kicked things off with a smooth 2-1 win over Seattle Sounders. Solid, but unremarkable. The real statement came in their next game against Paris Saint-Germain, a PSG side that had just destroyed Atletico Madrid 4-0 and were expected to stroll into the semi-finals. On paper, Botafogo didn't stand a chance. No A-list stars, no blockbuster signings, no European pedigree. But that underdog spirit, that's what made them so dangerous. PSG had 75% possession, 13 shots, only 2 on target. Surprising? Not really, once you saw how Botafogo operated. Without the ball, they dropped deep in a perfectly drilled block. Midfielders and defenders covered for each other like every gap was a matter of life and death. It was the same old PSG script, wide build-up, Hakimi and Kvaratskhelia stretching the flanks, feeding the middle. But every time the ball came inside, Botafogo's double pivot wall pushed it straight back out. And then they waited for that one crack, that one mistake. It came in the 36th minute. Savarino escaped the press, lifted his head, and fired a perfect pass behind the line. Igor Jesus latched on. His shot wasn't anything special until it deflected off Willian Pacho and left Donnarumma helpless. From there, PSG had no answers. They pushed higher, crossed more, threw on Nuno Mendes, Fabian Ruiz, and Barcola. But it was all sterile, because when you play against a South American team molded in Libertadores, possession means nothing unless you can break the wall. Botafogo ended the match with just 0.28 expected goals, meaning outside of that deflected shot, they barely threatened. But the one number that mattered most? Their net stayed untouched. Botafogo's win over PSG wasn't just a fleeting upset, it was a stark reminder to all of Europe of a forgotten truth. Brazilian football still boasts teams that play without flash, without trickery, and without vying for the spotlight. But when they do step onto the stage, they bring the true mettle of a squad forged in the fiery crucible of South American football. Then came the storm in Philadelphia. It wasn't just that Chelsea dropped 3 points, it was how Flamengo brought back that stubborn, relentless South American soul through the legs of players long familiar with Europe's bright lights. Pedro Neto gave Chelsea early hope, pouncing on Wesley France's awful mistake and scoring past Agustin Rossi in just the 13th minute. It looked like another routine win for the Blues, just like against LAFC. But after halftime, everything changed. Flamengo didn't need to dominate possession. They didn't need wave after wave of attacks. They just waited until Chelsea cracked. The equalizer came in the 62nd minute. Filipe Luis had just made a substitution. Bruno Henrique, barely on the pitch, broke the offside trap and calmly slotted it home after a delicious chip from Gerson. 3 minutes later, Henrique again, ghosting into space, pulling defenders with him and setting up Danilo for the tap-in. Suddenly, Lincoln Financial Field became a red and black carnival for the Brazilian diaspora in the stands. And if Chelsea's collapse wasn't already embarrassing enough, then came that red card. Nicholas Jackson, the Senegalese forward, stepped onto the pitch and just 4 minutes later walked right off. A reckless moment, a senseless dismissal, and the final insult on a night to forget. The knockout punch, minute 83. Wallace Jan, yet another substitute, ghosted into the box, met Gonzalo Plata's cutback, and calmly slotted past Robert Sanchez. Game. Set. Flamengo. Maresca could only bury his head in the dugout, helpless as the final minutes slipped away in slow, painful silence. But here's the twist. The men who brought Chelsea down weren't strangers. They were once family. Filipe Luis, once tasked with marking Lionel Messi in a Chelsea shirt. Jorginho, now running Flamengo's midfield, once played 213 matches for Chelsea and lifted the Champions League trophy in 2021. And the message was clear. Flamengo didn't need to dominate the ball. They just needed patience, structure, and that unmistakable South American grit. They came with a plan, and they executed it to perfection. Now, while Flamengo and Botafogo grabbed headlines with their bold counter-attacking brilliance, elsewhere in the tournament, a different kind of storm was brewing. It was quieter, colder, more calculated, and just as dangerous. Palmeiras, Fluminense, Boca Juniors, three South American giants, each with their own style, but bound by the same principle. If you can't beat Europe's money, break their rhythm. Palmeiras, 2 matches, 2 clean sheets, a goalless draw against Porto, followed by a controlled 2-0 win over Al Ahly. 4 straight clean sheets if you count domestic play. A team that knows how to shut doors and lock them tight. Fluminense, a concrete fortress. They pressed Dortmund until the Germans could barely breathe. The Bundesliga side kept firing, but Fluminense just kept shutting them down. Goalkeeper Kobel worked overtime as if every shot was survival. And then there's Boca Juniors. No strangers to pain, no strangers to pressure. They've made a habit of fighting through Libertadores bloodbaths, and they brought that same intensity here. They drew 2-2 with Benfica in a thrilling back and forth. Yes, Benfica had the bigger names, the flashier numbers. But Boca? Boca had heart. That wasn't just a draw, it was a warning shot. If you want to break Argentina's spirit, you'll need more than possession stats and a press. And then came the showdown with Bayern Munich. Boca didn't win, but they earned something just as important: respect. The Germans came out strong. Olise had a goal ruled out by VAR in the 8th minute, but Harry Kane opened the scoring soon after with a classic poacher's finish in the 18th. Bayern created chances, but couldn't kill the game. Then, in the 66th minute, Boca struck. A rapid-fire counter-attack. Captain Merentiel danced through the Bayern backline and buried his shot past Neuer. 1-1, a goal that screamed belief, defiance, Libertadores DNA. Bayern responded, of course. There, Bayern. Olise got his goal eventually. 84th minute, 2-1. The win. But Boca Juniors? They left a scar. They made Bayern sweat. And that match didn't just send Bayern into the knockouts. It marked the first time in this Club World Cup that a European side had even managed to beat a South American team. And yet, Boca still have a shot. They face Auckland City in the final group game. Win that and they could be right back in the knockout picture. But here's the thing. Whether they advance or not, as long as Boca Juniors carry that Libertadores fire, they'll always be ready to drag any European superclub into a street fight. That's the real fear. As for River Plate, they cruised past Asian representatives Urawa Reds with a convincing 3-1 victory, completely dominating the Japanese side throughout the match. The Argentine Giants continue to show impressive form, now unbeaten in 19 consecutive matches across all competitions, including the Domestic League and Copa Libertadores. Up next, River Plate will face Monterrey, the Mexican club led by Sergio Ramos, who recently held Inter Milan to a 1-1 draw. These South American sides, they know how to break games apart, especially in the final third. European clubs pass it around, circulate possession, dominate zones. But when it's time to break through the wall, Brazilian and Argentine defenses become nearly untouchable. They didn't come to the Club World Cup to put on a show. They came carrying the weight of a continent, the lessons of cup football, the scars of weekly wars back home. Palmeiras, with their keep the ball, keep the score line philosophy. Boca, with their blood and thunder approach to knockout football. These aren't just teams, they're weapons, built for chaos, forged in pressure. So here's the final thought. While European clubs walk into the Club World Cup with branding in mind, South Americans enter like warriors, knowing that only fire, discipline, and belief can stop billion-euro squads. And if anyone still doubts the power of the Libertadores, just wait, because South America's counterpunch is only getting started.